Hello everyone. So yesterday I was very fortunate to be able to attend an early premiere of Uncharted. And after thinking about it, I finally have kind of what I want to get my review for it. So of course this is based off of the Naughty Dog franchise, the video game franchise Uncharted, which I hold near and dear to my heart, as you can see right there. Well, you see the poster, but I love the franchise so much. It's always been one of my favorites and probably always be one of my favorite video game franchises. So of course this stars Tom Holland as Nathan Drake, Victor Sullivan or Sully is played by Mark Wahlberg, and also some other star power. We have Antonio Banderas playing the villain in this film. It comes in at just a little under 2 hours long, and without really kind of saying too much, I'm gonna try and make this spoiler free. But there are two after credit scenes to stick around for, and I do highly recommend doing so because I'll get to it in my review, but they were actually my favorite parts of this film. So without further ado, let me get into my review for Uncharted. So when this movie was first coming out, I remember seeing and reading a lot, and I remember Tom Holland saying too that this was going to be a direct prequel to the video games. And after seeing this movie and even to seeing the trailers, I was a little skeptical of if this was going to be the case, and I can say that it definitely is not. It takes a lot of creative freedom in terms of the origins of Nathan Drake and even Victor Sullivan, especially how they met. It is not, at least at this point, following the direction that the video games took in terms of setting up their friendship and both of their origins. We do get to see a lot more of Sam right off the bat. It's not just like he appears in the fourth game or the fourth movie. We get to actually see Sam, and it is similar to the origin that they set up in Uncharted 4, but enough differences there in terms of history and the path that he took. But the bulk of this movie is basically Victor recruits Nathan as kind of extra muscle for a job that turns out to be a lot bigger and a lot more complicated than they thought, and they end up traveling across continents each other trying to dig up an old pirate treasure worth close to $5 billion. And of course it's attracted Antonio Banderas' Santiago villain, and also Tati Gabrielle's Braddock villain, who is working for Antonio Banderas in this film. So it becomes, of course, the globe-trotting adventure that we expected Uncharted film to be, especially too with the treasure hunting. But I do have to say, before I say what I was going to say, also Chloe Frazer is in this film, played by Sophia Ali. And out of all the performances of kind of like the main cast that we know from the video games, she had my favorite. I thought that she absolutely nailed Chloe Frazer's character in this, and she was just an absolute pleasure to watch on screen. And yeah, she was really, really good. I can't exactly say the same about Tom or Mark's performance, where Tom definitely is, I do think he is a solid Nathan Drake, but I didn't find that there was really enough, well, one, good material for him to work with, nor was this just really, like I said, this doesn't feel like an Uncharted film all whole and whole. And I did definitely see a lot of Peter Parker, it seemed like, come out of his character and not so much Nathan Drake, where it's just in the games, of course, they were able to establish a lot more of a character, a presence, and also to just a personality of his own. Then Nate kind of grow into and even matured into a lot more. Where with Tom, he had like again, there's times where I thought the performance was great, and it was truly like I was watching a live action version of Nathan Drake. But there's other times where again, I just kind of saw Tom Holland or Peter Parker on the screen, and like I'm not just saying that because it's Tom Holland in the role. It's just the voice and the expressions and everything that he was doing was what we've seen him do in Spider-Man, and that's not who Nathan Drake is. And again, we see that a lot with Mark Wahlberg, more so where again, there's times where it really comes out and shines, but it's not really all the time with Mark Wahlberg, where again, I don't see Sully, I see Mark. But again, I'm gonna kind of hop a little bit ahead of myself here and talk about the two after credit scenes, where both of them were my absolute favorite parts in the movie. Where one, for spoiler's sake, I can't say too much, but the first one is just a little bit of setup that ties to kind of the origin that we get for a character from Uncharted 4. And I really, really like that. I'm excited to see it's in live action, and I'm excited to see kind of who they choose to play this role. And also, the second after credit scene had such great chemistry between Tom Holland or Nathan Drake and Mark Wahlberg or Victor Sully that we didn't see in the 2 hours of movie that came before this, where I just don't understand how this one after credit scene felt like an Uncharted video game, but the rest of this movie didn't. It's like all the chemistry and the magic that should have been there and was there in this after credit scene wasn't there in the rest of the movie, and that actually really shocked me and disappointed me because it felt like this little 1 minute long after credit scene was the Uncharted movie we should have gotten aside from what we just did. And again, too, it's just a lot of the magic and just how much more cinematic the games were over top of how cinematic this movie was just really surprised me and took me back a lot where this is a really boring film even when they're taking one of Nathan Drake's biggest stunts, the airplane sequence from the third game, and put it into this. I just found it so boring because it's shot so generically and not to the scale that the Uncharted games were able to do. And it's just like I said, Uncharted was always as much about the locations as it was about the characters, and the treasure and the scale of just everything that they're doing was shown so well. And so again, like the cinematography of these scenes in the video games blew my mind, and they still do every single time I even watch them on YouTube, or of course when I play them myself. It's just fantastic. Just how smooth they were was absolutely amazing. And again, I have my breath taken away every single time I watch these scenes. So I don't get why they weren't able to translate that whole grand scale where like everything, the location, the mission, the clues that they would go and find would all be on such a grand scale like the mission was. But I never felt that at all in this movie, where I found all of the puzzle scenes were so boring. And even though it was kind of cool to see them reference the book like you do when you play the video games, you don't really see it in that way where they just basically look like a book, look at a book that you don't get to see yourself. And they're like, oh, yeah, we have to go here. And like they don't explain that to you or show it to you or kind of pan out to like the larger scale of what this puzzle's supposed to represent or show. It's just they use it in a very like convenient and super generic way that again doesn't make the treasure hunting exciting. And again, like I said too, it's the action sequences in this just bored the hell out of me, where it was either like I just felt like they weren't showing the scale of the event nearly as much as they should be, or it was an over the top sequence more so than some of the games where the ending sequence in this where they basically attach pirate ships to cargo planes and they're fighting on ships that are being carried hundreds of feet in the air was just beyond goofy and silly and not really at all what Uncharted's about. It's where they use the environments and the sets as a part of just like the mission itself, where they're just flying over top of it and they're shooting 100-year-old cannons through the air. It didn't make sense to me. It was way too over the top and way too silly for me again to get into, where there was a point in this movie I didn't fall asleep, but I was really fighting to stay awake because it was just not entertaining to me at all. And I think that's such a huge shame for an Uncharted film because that's not at all what it should be. And I don't want to knock the performances because they can only go with so much. And even to Antonio Banderas was good for what he was in this movie for, but an absolute waste of his character and his talents as an actor. And I just really wish that they would have given him something a lot more substantial to work with here, because I was very disappointed with just how they used him and his character throughout this film. But with all in all taken together, I have to give Uncharted, and I feel like this is being generous, a very, very light 5 out of 10. I can't really recommend this film to anyone who's a fan of the games, and even to if you haven't played the games, you're gonna go into this and just walk out thinking this was a very boring, dull, and not a very cinematic action movie. It's super generic and just not really at all the scale and just presence that an Uncharted movie should have. And again, I just feel like it's a damn shame that it ended up this way. But like I said, with what they showed in these two after credit scenes, sequels could be a lot more of an improvement upon them. But again, I'm not really gonna hold my hopes up, and I don't really think anyone should going into sequels or going into this film. So if you've seen Uncharted, please let me know what you thought about it in the comments down below. If you like this review, of course, give it a thumbs up, and you can check out everything I do on my channel through my playlist down below. And for convenience sake, I'll link some up top here. Subscribe, turn the little ringer on if you want to know when I upload new videos. If you want to check out everything I do Twitch and live stream wise, there's a link to that in the bio of this video and on my channel description. And in both of those places, there is a link to the Media Mountain, which is my Discord where we talk about movies, video games, comic books, TV, pretty much everything that's awesome in this world. So you can definitely join that amazing community. That'll make it even more amazing than it is already. And yeah, just awesome, guys.